We have several more NHL free agent signings to talk about here today. A lot of RFAs included in that list. Plus, we also have some very interesting information to take a look at regarding recently high draft pick Matvei Michkov. Did he never really want to go to Washington? Were there other teams he would have refused to go to? Did he really want the Flyers? We had learned a lot at a recent interview in Russia, and we'll discuss this whole situation coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some more signings and some more information on Matvei Michkov or the NHL draft I want to take a quick look at here as well. First up, we do have a lot of RFA signings and a couple of UFAs in there here as well. The Los Angeles Kings have signed a trio of their restricted free agents, including defenseman Toby Bjorkfoot. He gets a 2-year deal, $775,000. They've also signed forward Samuel Fadro and Tyler Madden, both getting a 1-year deal, a 2-way contract at that, $775,000. So they've taken care of a bunch of their RFAs here all at one time. The Seattle Kraken have also signed one of their restricted free agents, and that's defenseman Will Borgen. He gets a 2-year deal at $2.7 million per season. So they avoid salary arbitration they had filed. So that's already one off the list that we had talked about. There was originally 22 players filed for arbitration, and the list is already starting to be knocked down here. With the signing of Will Borgen, that only leaves them, from an RFA standpoint, Vince Dunn and Cale Fleury. Cale Fleury likely getting a 2-way deal, not even projected to be on the NHL roster at this point. So really, the main one would be Vince Dunn. They have $9.8 million in salary cap space. I know Dunn was likely going to get a much more substantial contract than some of these other guys, so be curious to see how things go for Dunn in Seattle, but they should still have a decent amount of wiggle room after they've got him signed. I'll be real curious to see that contract, though. But they have the Kraken have also added another depth piece on the UFA front as well, signing longtime veteran centerman Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. Now, he gets a 1-year deal, league minimum $775,000. So, of course, he's been at a few teams here. Let's see, like a lot of his stays with his teams lost, a couple of seasons. He at one point was with Vegas early on, was with the Avalanche, the Lightning, and now he goes to Seattle. And he does have a couple of former teammates that he'll be reuniting with the Kraken. Of course, he played in Tampa with Yanni Gourde. Played in Colorado with Andrei Burakovsky. So a couple of good forward teammates and friends there, which I'm sure make things a little bit easier when you're joining a new club. But that's a nice veteran depth signing for Seattle. Bellemare is still very capable of being a fourth-line center. Decent on the penalty kill, face-offs, that kind of stuff. Not going to give you a ton of offense, but certainly a responsible veteran player with good leadership qualities. So very much like that signing here for Seattle. And another UFA signing as well in Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Penguins have signed Vinny Hinostroza, another depth piece added there by Kyle Dubas. He gets a 1-year deal at a league minimum $775,000. Still some key interesting UFAs out there. Obviously, there's Matt Dumba, there's Tarasenko, Thomas Tatar, Austin Watson, a few others out there too. I know when it comes to Tatar, apparently there's been links that he may be considering an offer for the Winnipeg Jets. Tarasenko, of course, has been linked to Ottawa and into Carolina. I'm not sure Carolina can make that work. I know there was some talk about taking a cheap, short deal with the Rangers. That might be an option. I know Tyler Mott's actually still out there as well, thinking of the Rangers and the Senators. With Mott, of course, playing with the Rangers in 2 different scenarios recently, and of course in Ottawa as well. He's still looking for work, just like he was last year. He was also a late signing by the Senators, and he got a 1-year deal, and then was traded back to the Rangers at the deadline. So we'll see. We should still have some more interesting names here coming up in the days ahead as these last number of players get sorted out. I know with Dumba, there was talk about Arizona. There's seen talk of San Jose. Some think that maybe he's waiting for the Maple Leafs to see if they can clear some money and sign on a 1-year cheaper deal there. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. A number of teams are reportedly in the mix for a bunch of these guys, and a lot of it does have to do, I think, with clearing money, which is why some of this is kind of held up. Some teams still have RFAs to handle, which could lead to more buyouts, which could just open up some space. And just, some teams are still trying to make trades too. And all that will have to get sorted out. Now, one of the more interesting players heading into the 2023 draft was Matvei Michkov for a variety of reasons. One, he was extremely talented. Of course, he's from Russia, so there's a lot of debate, concern, call it what you want, about if and when he'll come to the NHL. Teams, not crazy would have him to wait due to the fact that he has a 3-year contract to play in the KHL. Obviously I understand you get a draft lottery pick and you have a, opportunity to grab a real talented player, and you don't want to wait forever for them to come over. I can understand why that would be frustrating, but at the same time, it is what it is. This is always the case with Russian players. They quite often do play in Russia for at least a couple of years before they make the jump to North America. And there have been some cases where the player and the team ended up terminating the contract early and coming over. So it's not completely, an ironclad thing that they're not going to come sooner than what you think they might based on their current contract. But obviously a lot of teams were put off by this. Now, there was also some speculation and rumors about this kid's character. I mean, I personally don't know a lot about him as a person. I know watching him play in some of his highlights, he looks phenomenal. Looks like a very talented kid. In long term, I think it's fair to say that between him and Bedard, they very well might be the two most talented players in this draft. And there might be teams that picked ahead of Philly that might regret not taking him. But I do think there was some real legit concern, and these articles and interviews here kind of confirm it for us, that there were some teams that if they had picked Michkov, that I don't think he would have reported and signed. And I really wonder about that for sure. Now, there's an article that I first looked at with TVA Sports, of course, out of Quebec. The Shores Larac, former NHL player, obviously doing some media nowadays as well. And he made an appearance on which he does often with Tony Marinaro on a podcast that he has. And he was asked, apparently he talked to one of the Habs scouts. He went to speak to them after the draft and wanted to know why they passed on Matvei Michkov. So, of course, the explanation that Larac was given from his Habs source was that essentially they firmly believe that you win championships with defense, and having a top-notch decor in the NHL is what's going to lead them to win future championships. So they had an opportunity to grab the top defenseman in the draft at the 5 spot with David Reinbacher, who they were very, very high on, and thought that was a really good opportunity. It might be too good to pass up. So there was that. They also had some concerns with a lot of the stories and reports coming out of Russia that the Michkov kid was a bit of a not a team player, you could say, and that he was causing some locker room drama and issues on the team. That he wasn't, just a great, influence, you could say, in that respect. There were some character issues, and we did hear of these before. This is not new information that Michkov had character issues, at least based on reports. We'll find out long term, probably, at least we hope we may, whether or not this is true or not when he does eventually come to the NHL. And you know what? At the same time, too, people change, people grow up. When you're talking about a 16, 17-year-old compared to a 23, 24-year-old, big difference of personality, and a lot of those issues may go away completely on their own just by him growing up and maturing. If they're indeed true, because we can't really say with absolute certainty that that's the case. But Montreal certainly had that opportunity there and didn't take it because of those concerns and because of the opportunity to take Reinbacher. That's how high they were on Reinbacher. Now, I know a lot of Habs fans were not thrilled with that choice, and I think long-term, I guess you'll see that this Reinbacher guy does look really good. And if Montreal scouts are onto something, then he projects to possibly be a top-pair defenseman. Time will tell. We'll never know, because even some scouts, they see what they see. Doesn't mean the player is going to develop into everything that's potentially there, right? It's all based on potential. There's a lot that goes up, wrong and right that we can't control. So at the end of the day, there's also another article by the website called The Russian Machine Never Breaks, RMNB, and they obviously are very connected when it comes to Russian players. And they had an article as well where there was an interview that was done over in Russia with the Russian agent for Michkov. Now, of course, some of these Russian players, they usually have an agent that negotiates their Russian contracts, and then they have a North American agent that will do their NHL stuff. Agent for his Russian contract was interviewed, and he was asked a lot about, Michkov and the draft, and, did he, but the connection to Washington, because there was a lot of rumors leading up to the draft that he really wanted to go to Washington because of the influence of Alex Ovechkin. A lot of Russian players, I'm sure, grew up idolizing him, and, it's not that far-fetched of an idea. However, according to the agent, he never wanted to go to Washington at all and preferred not to. So that was quite surprising as well. There was some revelations in this interview as well. It said he was really close to going number 2 overall to the Anaheim Ducks, and Pat Verbeek almost made the jump to do that. Now, I had put out a video, I'm not sure, but within a week before the draft, because I had seen some intel as well saying that Pat Verbeek might be bold enough to take Michkov at number 2. I think it might have been Elliot Friedman, the 32 Thoughts, where that first mentioned that. And so we talked about it here on the channel and then looked over that intel. Like, I wouldn't put it past him. If he's a top 2 talented kid, and if he feels like he'll come and play and be a good positive impact like they think, then ultimately they might do it. And Verbeek, to me, is like an Yzerman disciple. He's been trained by one of the better GMs in the league. I think he's brave enough to do it. Now, he was really, really close. Ultimately settled on Leo Carlson at number 2. And then, of course, Adam Fantilli with number 3. And goes to Philly at 7, honestly. So, big difference there. Philly was right ahead of Washington. Now, there was also in this article disconfirmed as well, because we already kind of knew that Washington was trying to trade and move up to get ahead of Philly. Because once reports started surfacing that the Flyers were extremely interested in Michkov, and there was a good chance they were going to take him if he was available, they knew that Washington knew that was their best odds to get him was to move ahead. Teams started to figure out closer to the draft that San Jose probably wasn't a threat. They're likely going with Will Smith. He's a top 5 rated player. There was, a connection there to Mike Greer and Will Smith with his son. Makes sense that might be the player he's more comfortable, more familiar with as well. Then, of course, as teams started to learn, Montreal might go for the D. Then we had heard, all we knew is that Arizona wasn't a threat to take him, that they never interviewed him and that they showed no interest. And I think they were probably told, because this interview in Russia does say that he had no interest whatsoever to go to Arizona. And I do wonder if it was that strong of a feeling, if he would have pulled an Eric Lindros and refused to report. I guess we'll never know because it never happened, but ultimately it sounds like it could have been one of those situations. And then, of course, like I said, you had, after Arizona was Philly. So, the Flyers brass said that he was thrilled to be a Flyer and told them during their interview that he wanted to be a Flyer. And they even used the word, now this could be just a translation issue, but in the Russian interview, they even said that the Philly had negotiations with him. So I kind of wonder what they talked about. I mean, obviously he would probably talk about what his role could be, when he could come over to North America, where do they see him playing. I don't know what more they can negotiate. I mean, the contract rules are the contract rules. Once you sign, and there's like not a transfer agreement in place between the NHL and KHL. I don't know, maybe that's just a language breakdown. We'll have to wait and see on that. But ultimately, the Philly to taking Michkov and the mutual love affair, you could almost call it, between the two, it started to grow and it became a real thing. And there's no doubt that's what they both wanted. But all the talk about him wanting to go to Washington ahead of the draft was not true. Montreal, even though there was some talk at one point they might take him, that was never really close. And he definitely would have not have gone to Arizona should they have made that choice. I think he would have gone to Anaheim had they made the pick at 2, but that's probably about it. So, interesting to know. I mean, obviously, at the draft, players probably do have their preferences, even though they'll probably never publicly speak about it. But you don't usually see the tactics used here to try to manipulate yourself to get to where the team you want to go to. I kind of have to wonder if all the talks about Washington, maybe they started them and tried to leak that out to make sure Philly was going to do everything they could to take him if that's where he really wanted to go. It's not unusual, especially when we're talking about the type of manipulation that we are here. It's quite a thing that you see, and it's not something that you see very much at NHL draft with all this kind of talk. But at the end of the day, it's just really interesting, not something you see every day. So let me know your thoughts on the old Michkov story. What are your thoughts now? If another team had picked him, how things could have gone. Let me know your thoughts on the signings, and I'll be back later with some more news and trade rumors as well. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.